Checking in on the Peacock and Williamson mailbag today. Got a lot of questions about quarterbacks. So we're going to take that even further, looking into some advanced metrics on those quarterbacks. How are the quarterbacks performing through 4 weeks of the NFL season? And how does that make their team's performance change, according to the statistics on today's Peacock and Williamson?
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson with you as always. Thanks for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, we got a full mailbox of questions about quarterbacks on today's show, Matt. And so we're going to dig into the quarterbacks. How have they looked? I think there's some big surprises, as there usually is every season, right? You think you know what's going on in the NFL. Just wait a week and you'll find out you don't really know what's going on. So if you wait 4 weeks after an entire offseason, things are haywire around the NFL. But there are some things that I think do make some sense around the league. I want to start with the questions, though, on the quarterbacks. In fact, I'm going to throw one right out there out of the way. There was a question addressed to us about the 49ers. It says it's week 16. Niners are 9-5 or 8-6 in contention for the playoffs. Trey Lance is now 100% healthy. Do you put him back in there as a starter over Jimmy Garoppolo? Well, Kyle Shanahan has already squashed that. He said, even if, because there was talk that maybe it was a 12 to 16 week injury. Maybe Lance could be ready by the end of the year. Kyle Shanahan was asked that question. He said, no, Trey's done for the year. He's going to get healthy for next year. So that's done there. Now, look, he said that Jimmy was supposed to be traded too, and he's back on the 49ers roster.
I guess that's true. Right.
Change in the NFL, like I just mentioned. Yeah, take the temperature and then wait a week and see how much that changes. So we'll see. But as of now, no. Trey Lance, it's 2023 for him.
Okay. I was actually curious about that. I'm glad you answered it because I didn't know the answer. And as you were saying, I'm like, boy, that'd be asking a lot from the youngster. You know, I mean, hey, keep this train rolling, throw you right back in the mix, even though things are going well. I think you just ride with how it goes.
And thank you, by the way, to all the listeners that dropped us questions, whether it was on Twitter or in the comments on YouTube. We appreciate you. We're not going to get to all of them. We're going to kind of focus on quarterbacks today. Here's one. Can teams do anything worse than not supporting their young quarterbacks? Why did the Bears draft DBs in the second round? Conversely, look at what the Eagles and Dolphins did for Hurts and Tua. Should teams support young quarterbacks at all costs? I say yes, Matt. Short answer, because you're seeing how bad right now Justin Fields is looking, and he's playing poorly, but there's not a lot of separation. He's not getting any help. His number 2 wide receiver, Equanimous St. Brown, was a cast-off. He couldn't even break the top 5 with the Packers, who were trying to figure out the wide receiver position on their own.
It's funny. I mean, we didn't ask for this question, but it sure applies to my team, and coincidentally, I write an article a week for DK Pittsburgh Sports, always Steeler-related, football-related, of course. And my article this week was basically saying the second you drafted Kenny Pickett, and this applies for any first-round quarterback, but even more so, the second you insert that player into the lineup and make it his team, as the Steelers did this past week, that it takes a village to raise a quarterback. I mean, I'm talking ownership, front office, head coach, all the offensive coaches, all the defensive coaches, every scout, every lunch lady, the guy that parks your car, the dude that cleans the facility, the strength staff, the guy that cuts the grass. I mean, everybody in the organization's goal needs to be geared towards making your first-round quarterback a success. And that doesn't mean baby the young man and, let me get that for you. No, I mean, there's some tough love involved too, but always have to be conscious, in my opinion, from the organization head to toe about making your young first-round quarterback work.
No doubt. I mean, absolutely.
Whatever it takes.
Important because it's your job too. You can't sit there and say, it's too bad the quarterback didn't turn out great. Well, guess what? Now you're looking for work as well. So it's in everybody's best interest for that quarterback to be successful, and you have to make them successful. And especially when you consider what the Bears did in the draft. And they drafted a corner who's a good player. They drafted a safety who was a good player.
Sure.
But how much are those players actually helping your football team? Former Bear Tashawn Gibson was signed in week 3 of the preseason by the 49ers. He's starting on the best defense in the NFL, right? You can find a starting safety. You know what's really hard to find is people
franchise quarterbacks for the next 15 years.
Yeah, exactly. And protect that quarterback, guys who can make plays for that quarterback. And I think Tua is the best example because, year 3 in development for both Hurts and Tua, but they have 2 potentially star level players that they can throw the ball to on offense, whereas the Bears have none. And Darnell Mooney is more of a number 2 anyway. And then you don't even have a number. You're throwing in number 4s as the number 2, right? And that's if you're fully healthy. So it's a tough situation for Justin Fields. And if he comes out of this unscathed and he's okay and he's a good quarterback, it'll almost be shocking because they've done so little to help him. And I know you're a defensive head coach in Brian Eberflus, and you're trying to build things right and build a foundation there with the new GM, Ryan Poles, and but the Steelers is the perfect example, like you mentioned, because they drafted the guy the Bears should have drafted in George Pickens in the 2nd round, right?
Right.
He was there. It was such a perfect combination. A guy who can make plays down the field. He's a perfect, rangy receiver for the type of player that Justin Fields is too. Like you're going to look back at that and think, what the heck are we doing? Even if, Gordon and, who's the safety from Penn State they drafted in the 2nd round?
Brisker. Yeah.
Jaquan Brisker. Good player, right? And fine players. But they already had a really good safety in Eddie Jackson. That was, in my opinion, not the way to go for the Bears. This isn't hindsight. This was at the time. You're like, what are you doing?
Yeah, we said the same thing then.
Yeah. So, and it's not a shock. It should not be a surprise at all that Hurts and Tua are developing before our eyes and playing better. So the Bears this offseason, whatever it takes, if you have to drop your 1st rounder in trade for a veteran,
AJ Brown type move, right?
If you have to spend part of your $100 million of free agent money on wide receivers, then you have to do it. You have to do everything to make your quarterback successful in this league. And we're seeing how important wide receivers are, and the teams that spend on wide receivers are not unhappy that they did it this offseason.
Right. I think we're very fair to criticize the Bears as we just did. And frankly, Fields has been terrible, and some of it's on him. I mean, I thought he would withstand this situation better than he has, but he's been horrible. I will destroy this team if this past offseason, they didn't have money. The only big ticket item they signed was Larry Ogunjobi, who failed the physical. They had no money, and they didn't have a 1st-round pick because of the Fields trade. Well, this upcoming year is a total opposite. So, if they don't really, really go out of their way, and if that means even overspending to save Fields' career or the next quarterback, if he's so bad they don't think they can live with him, I will destroy this team. I can sort of understand it this past year, but you still take Pickens over the safety. I mean, you know what I mean?
And it takes time for a wide receiver to develop. So let's say you use your 1st-round pick on a wide receiver this year. Well, he might not be that great until year 2 or year 3 anyway.
Sure.
So you need some development time. And then by that time, you're in year 4 for Justin Fields, and they're probably moving on if he's not good by that point. So I think the Bears dropped the ball, and the players they got were good players. So that's not the issue. The issue is the value of those players. Did you draft a shutdown corner and an all-pro safety? Because if you didn't, you screwed up.
Right. And still, does winning games 13-9 and never throwing the ball make you a better franchise? Not really.
Let's see.
We'll see.
If Justin Fields is a complete bust, right, and he's not good, well, guess what you're going to have to do again? Draft a quarterback. So you're still going to need those receivers and playmakers on offense for that quarterback too.
100%. I mean, there's many examples. The Jets did it right, in my opinion, whether Wilson hits or not. I was critical of the Jags for signing Kirk and Zay Jones to the money they did. But now Lawrence has 2 NFL receivers. You know what I mean? Right. He didn't last year.
Yeah, and the Jaguars couldn't get anybody else to go there. So they had to overpay. Right. And by the way, there's funny money built in. Those guys aren't going to get paid as much as it looked like they were going to get paid.
Right.
So,
and then the subsequent receiver contracts made them not look as bad either.
Right. So yes, to answer your question, short answer is yes, for sure on that one. Okay, next, we've got a question about Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, Goff, and Stafford, and how interesting those quarterbacks have played here in the first 4 weeks of the 2022 NFL season. Then we'll dig into some EPA numbers, some advanced statistics on exactly how these quarterbacks are playing to start the 2022 season. When you're getting prepared for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a job post in minutes at LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. I'm on LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn. You know that that's the place that people who have jobs or looking for jobs are already going to be. So why not add your job to that purple hiring frame so your LinkedIn profile can spread the word, let people know you're hiring, so folks in your network can help you find the right people to interview and eventually hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the right candidates with just the right skills and experience. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidate you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day. Make sure you check out NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL. Locked On's local experts give you the inside scoop on the 5 biggest games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday Night Football, plus betting advice from the field's leading experts, BetOnline. Follow NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Next question here that's going to lead us into a little bit of a rabbit hole, and Matt Williamson, as he does, is working on some spreadsheets as we speak. I got some in my email box this morning. Not a question, but let's take a minute to talk Geno Smith outplaying Russell Wilson and Goff having better numbers than Stafford. Love the show, boys. Go Steelers. All right, we got a Steelers fan asking questions about the Seahawks, a former Seahawk, a current Denver Bronco, a former Ram, a current Ram, and a current Detroit Lion.
Yeah, sure. That all adds up.
and what's funny is, no doubt, just watching their play on the field, looking at the numbers, Geno Smith is outplaying Russell Wilson. Goff is outplaying Matthew Stafford. Are we living in a bizarro world? Is this just too small of a sample, Matt? What's going on?
That's definitely true. I mean, I had some reservations about Wilson, and not that he stinks or anything, but just what they gave up and at his stage of his career. And those are coming to fruition. I will say Wilson played his best game of the year this past week, and I'm very excited to watch him tomorrow, although I think their best offensive player, Javonte Williams, being out hurts his team quite a bit. And that would have been my formula to get Wilson and the offense back, was go through Javonte. Maybe he's turning corner. We'll see. But Geno's outplayed him by a mile. I mean, it really isn't even close. And there are some of these guys, you know, we're looking at EPA, Cooper Rush, Jacoby Brissett, Geno Smith, that the world looks at as backups. Mariota's not that, bad listed here too. And I do think there's something to be said for sustained excellence for a quarterback. I mean, it's like the pitcher that goes through the league the second time, you see all the new film on them and you realize he still has this big weakness I can exploit. So I don't know that it'll keep up, but taking away what Geno Smith has done is crazy talk. I mean, he really has played well, has elevated the offense where we thought, fantasy world thought, man, I can't draft Metcalf or Lockett. Instead he's elevated those guys. And I think Goff has as well. I mean, he needs to be protected. He found himself in a perfect situation behind that line and with great weapons. But even without Swift and St. Brown this past week, he put up 1 million points and is throwing the football really well, something we've always known he can do. Stafford doesn't really worry me, but this elbow thing is a little frightening. And the Rams, if you want to look at EPA or really any metric, are like at the bottom of the league offensively, and that line is not going to get any better. So I tend to think these things are here to stay. Here's something to throw at you. I think the answer is pretty obvious in Seattle, but I don't think it's as obvious in Detroit. If you have an early pick, are you still grabbing the quarterback, and do you have to do it this year?
I'm not going to say that you have to do it this year.
Yeah.
But if the quarterback is there, you have to take him too.
For both teams.
That's
the Lions and Seahawks.
Well, for sure for the Seahawks.
Yeah, for sure for the Seahawks.
Geno, nice story, but you've got to continue to build that thing.
Yeah.
But you don't need to go crazy and spend 3 first-round picks to go get the player.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
It's like, if you're picking
Sell
8th,
the farm.
If you're picking 8th and there's a guy there and he's 6'5", 240, and you're like, this could be the next Josh Allen, you have to take that player, right? But you don't have to fight to get up to number 1 to take that player.
Okay.
That's probably the way you look at it for both these teams. And it's funny because the 49ers did that. They had a quarterback and they didn't need to go up and get a guy. And now they're sitting there with no first round picks for 3 years and a quarterback who's hurt, and they didn't help themselves. And until Trey Lance becomes a superstar quarterback, that was a bad process and a bad move by them. So you don't want to overdo it going for your quarterback, but it's still a quarterback driven league. And it's important to get one of those top 7 to 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. It just helps so much. And if you don't have them, you owe it to yourself to try to get that guy. But if you feel okay and you feel like you're in the next tier and you're not hurting yourself a quarterback every week, then you don't have to go crazy going to find that next guy. So
yeah, I mean, if the Lions win 8 games, picking 15th, 14th, whatever, my move might be, let's run it back with Goff and draft defense like crazy. As opposed to betting the farm to get up to 2 or whatever.
The whole Russell Seahawks thing that's interesting to me, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the Browns and having weapons on offense. Would you take right now what the Seahawks have with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Rashad Penny, even backup Walker, right? Yeah. Like, would you take that over what the Broncos have in Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy? I still haven't seen that. I thought the Jeudy breakout was coming. Still haven't seen that yet. Now it's Melvin Gordon, but they did have Javonte Williams. Like, it's not like Russell Wilson went to a better situation with his weapons. And we're seeing that Geno Smith can facilitate DK Metcalf, and DK Metcalf's still a freak. And so he can put up 150 on you as long as he's got a capable quarterback, which Geno Smith's capable. Even if he's capable, high level backup, he's still a professional veteran quarterback.
Yeah, and without Javonte, I think I'd rather have Seattle's stable of weapons, and I think so. And I'm not, this feels like I'm cutting on Russ left and right, but the number of plays they ran in Seattle last year and the year before is remarkably low. Imagine what DK would have done in an offense that was middle of the pack just in plays run. His numbers were great and they were never on the field.
Right. Yeah. and you know what? And Geno has the benefit of a top 10 left tackle that they wouldn't have been able to pick if they didn't trade away Russell Wilson too.
Right. So that's the building blocks in place to our old conversation. Right. Like Justin Fields would have loved to have fallen into having Cross as his left tackle. What I mean?
Justin Fields would love to be in Seattle right now. Metcalf and Charles Cross, and even their third rounder is looking pretty good. Abe Lucas at right tackle too.
Yeah, and the next guy should like it quite a bit. I mean, whoever Seattle drafts, assuming they do, even if it's an early second rounder, and they got extra picks too, so they're in real good shape.
What's remarkable about the Rams, though, on the flip side, is the Rams don't have the weapons that
they have the resources.
Goff and the Lions don't have the weapons that the Rams do for Stafford.
I might fight you on that.
Well, because last week,
they're a little more unproven.
The Lions put up 45 points without Amon-Ra St. Brown and Swift, their 2 best playmakers. So it was Hawkinson, and that's it.
And Jamison Williams is still out there. He hasn't played a snap.
He hasn't played yet. So eventually they might have some weapons. And, I think that's a perfect combination of a guy that can do it all, short to intermediate stuff, Amon-Ra St. Brown with the guy who can just blow by people and take the top off with Jamison Williams eventually. But they didn't have that last week. They put up 45. So that's where the small sample of 4 weeks comes in, because it was Seahawks and Lions. And when you look at the EPA, which we're about to for quarterbacks, when you look at those for defenses, those are the bottom 2 defenses in the league. We have to let this normalize a little bit with the bigger picture of the whole season. But right now, through 4 weeks, Goff is clearly outplaying Stafford.
Oh, yeah.
And Geno Smith is clearly outplaying Russell Wilson.
Yeah. I mean, those 2 guys might go to the Hall of Fame. They've won Super Bowls. They're making $1 billion and they're worth it. But those other 2 teams are kind of chuckling to themselves with extra first-round picks in their pocket and, youth and things to really build around, it's pretty enticing.
And again, bringing this whole conversation full circle with what you have right now with the Rams, they do only have Cooper Kupp, and that's about it on offense because the running game isn't working. Cam Akers is not doing much. Their offensive line is bad. One thing the Lions do have over the Rams is offensive
line.
Yeah,
100%.
All right, let's take a further look into the statistics here. Expected points added, EPA, for quarterbacks in the NFL through 4 weeks. Next. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting information this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. After 4 weeks, a lot of things are changing with odds for who can be MVP of the league, who might be representing the AFC and the NFC in the Super Bowl, whoever the first coach is to be fired. How about Coach of the Year? You can find all of those odds on the NFL and, of course, weekly lines at BetOnline, but it's not just about football either. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, golf, live in-game betting, up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. And, of course, if you want to make wagers, you need to be informed, and you can do both at BetOnline. So head over to BetOnline.net. Use your mobile device to learn more about all of the trends in action at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Matt, take it away. You've been diving deep into some EPA numbers and EPA per play. And for those who don't know what EPA is, it is expected points added. So if you're looking at, for example, the way we have it, the way we're looking at it right now, 1 through 32 for the quarterbacks in the NFL is expected points added per play. So it's on a per play basis. So the quarterbacks at the top are adding, a third of a point every play. So you could see when you take a bunch of dropbacks, how that could really change the final score of the game. And this is versus expected, which is down in distance and situation. Most quarterbacks gain so much on 1st and 10. Right?
Yeah, right.
And
in this situation, this is what's expected.
Exactly. And it's probably not a shock to anybody out there that Patrick Mahomes is leading the way among NFL quarterbacks through the first 4 weeks on expected points added per play at about 3.6 or 0.368, which is 0.37 rounded up. So over a third of a point per play. So if you're talking about a baseline quarterback that is adding no points per play, just, the baseline 0.0.
He's not adding, he's not subtracting. Right.
Patrick Mahomes is versus that expectation per play is adding a third of a point per play. So every 3 plays, that's an extra point on the scoreboard that Patrick Mahomes is adding versus a baseline 0.0 player. And there's some negative numbers in the league as well. Right.
I mean, so, I'm not a math wizard. I'm not a stats major, but I play one on TV. I like to fiddle with my spreadsheets, of course. And again, please correct me when I'm wrong about, I'm sure there's some statisticians out there that listen to my stuff and go, you're missing the boat on some things, whatever. But I steal from others and I learn from others. And I think EPA is great that way. I've often told you guys my favorite stat is yards per play. I think football, if you can break it down to the lowest common denominator per play, I think that tells a lot as opposed to total rushing yards, total receiving yards. But if you break it down per play, I think you have a really good feel for where these guys are at. So let's just, inform people who's at the top of the league, who's at the bottom of the league. And there's a couple surprises, including those guys we talked about earlier. And Mahomes is pretty clearly number 1. Tua's number 2. Josh Allen is, no one we shocked, is number 3. And they're kind of in their own tier. They're the only ones over 3.3.
It's amazing too, because Tua, they added Tyreek Hill, already had Jalen Waddle. Tua's the same guy as he was before.
Yeah, right.
And he's going crazy this year, right? And I know, some people are going to say it's Mike McDaniel. He's an offensive wizard, and hopefully, Tua comes out of this okay. He's not going to play this week. There's a scary moment there with the head injury.
He's only played 132 plays all year. So
right, but they've been explosive, almost as explosive as anybody in the league. And he's getting the ball out quick and accurately. And both Tyreek Hill and Mike McDaniel talked about how accurate, how catchable Tua's passes are. So that's going great for him. Josh Allen was the perfect example. Like, if you are the Chicago Bears, go look at what the Buffalo Bills did for Josh Allen, going out and getting Stephon Diggs. It's so important to have those playmakers for your quarterback, a guy who can get open at the NFL level. And Josh Allen is a freak and has put in a lot of work, and he's up there. But here's what's remarkable is Geno Smith, and then Lamar Jackson's 4. Geno Smith's 5th in the league right now in EPA, and he's putting up numbers, putting up points, and he's facilitating his playmakers, and he is well ahead of where, in fact, I haven't even found Russell Wilson yet. I don't think Russell Wilson's even
right in the middle. He's
20.
like
actually he's about 20th. Yeah, he's 20th overall, it looks like, for Russell Wilson.
Yeah, and just looking at some of these numbers, I didn't realize Geno, he's completing almost 80% of his throws. I mean, 79.7% of his throws are completions. That's good coaching, in my opinion, too. That's your receivers getting open. Helps to play the Lions last week. There are some strength of schedule things here as well, but he's putting the football where it needs to be, and he's 5th. He's not, wow, nice story, he's middle of the road. He's 5th. Congrats.
Any other takeaways from the folks at the top of the list? I think Jared Goff, just bringing up the ones that have been mentioned today, Jared Goff is about 10, and Matthew Stafford's down at 25 or so.
Mm-hmm. A couple, Hurts is right behind those guys, as you'd imagine. He's been great. He's in the MVP category. Lawrence, despite a rough week, is right behind them. I think that's very encouraging. Brissett and Cooper Rush, are right next to each other at 10 and 11. I don't know that that's going to hold up as well as Geno, but they're getting the job done and they're being efficient. EPA is about efficiency. I just need Brissett and Rush to be efficient, and that's what they're doing. They're doing what they're coached to do, so that stood out to me too.
Justin Herbert, obviously, he's got the rib injury. He's playing through it. He's leading the NFL in passing yards right now. And he's also leading the league, I think, in pass attempts, maybe second to, he's second by 2
never run the ball.
To Josh Allen. But then they got the running backs a little bit more involved last week. And I think that was really important for the Chargers going forward, not to put everything on Justin Herbert.
Yeah, but he's going to have to do that with Slater out and Bosa, and they don't run the football. And I also think his partner in crime here, Burrow, who's right behind him on this list, despite that awful showing against the Steelers, pick after pick after pick, he's starting to climb back up this list, and he looks like the player we thought he was going to be.
How about the bottom? Coming in at number 32, Baker Mayfield.
He's horrible. It seemed like J.J. Watt batted down every pass he threw. He can't see. He can't play around the trees. His accuracy is poor. He thinks he's a better athlete than he is. He is horrendous. And I think that's clearly the worst offense in the league. Well, maybe not clearly. There's a lot of bad offenses, but they're a real strong case to be the worst offense in the league, which is unacceptable with DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey and a rebuilt line. Really bad.
You know what's hilarious, though, to me, is we've talked about how Kirk Cousins is sort of the Mendoza line for what you want your good starting quarterback to be. And if you have Kirk Cousins, you're trying to get better, but some teams would love to have Kirk Cousins. It's hilarious that looking at EPA, he's the closest to 0 in the entire league.
Is he really? That's who he is, and that's fine. It just gives you a bit of a ceiling. Interesting.
Davis Mills, Mitch Trubisky, Justin Fields. Those are the bottom 4 in the NFL. I don't think that's very surprising, but it's amazing how much worse Baker Mayfield is. He's more than twice on the negative side of Justin Fields.
Right. That's remarkable.
Minus 0.21. So that means 0.2 points per play worse than expected. Is what Baker Mayfield's doing per snap. That's very bad.
What we're looking at here, like Flacco is 5th worst. The Panthers would kill to have Mitch Trubisky or Joe Flacco. That's how bad it is right now. Or Wentz. Wentz is down here.
This isn't all on quarterback, and a lot of people I have talked about how really good coaches, really good coordinators can prop up. This is as much of a coordinator offense. It's not just on quarterback, but it is pretty important for quarterbacks as well. They're the biggest part of all of this. So this is in the offense entirety. But of course, like we mentioned, it matters if you have an offensive line. It matters if you have a good coach. It matters if you have playmakers for those quarterbacks as well.
Yep. My last note, I know we're up against it, is 2 guys in the middle I find interesting. This fella named 3 in a row, actually. Wilson, Brady, Rodgers are at 18, 19, 20. Yeah, they've had some success in this league.
Right. Yeah. And haven't been putting up a ton of points so far this
Mm-hmm.
season. We'll see if that stuff normalizes when we get a bigger sample later in the year. Tomorrow, it is time to preview week 5, and we'll be here with you every step of the way. Peacock and Williamson.